Zacks Know Your Options, a weekly overview of unique option strategies and ideas designed to help you beat the market no matter which direction it's going. Let's talk about options efficiency now, shall we? Okay. With Kevin Matras, who is our options expert here at Zacks.com. This is interesting. Options efficiency, another one of your unique take on options, I presume.
There you go. First off, let me see if I can set this up. One of the benefits with options, of course, is leverage. But in today's piece, I want to refer to it as efficiency. And the best way for me to illustrate this is to be able to give you an example. Right. So, let's use a stock like Apple. It's trading right now at approximately $207 a share. So if you were to buy 100 shares of Apple, it would cost you roughly $20,700. For every $1 price move in Apple, your position would change in value by $100. If Apple moves up 20 bucks, which is nearly 10%, your investment in that stock would be up $2,000. It's pretty good so far.
All right, I'll have to take your word for it because math was never my strong suit. But what about the option?
All right, let's look at it. Our goal with this strategy is to try and mimic as close as we can the same profit gain without taking on substantially different risk, aside from the obvious fact that one is an option and the other thing is a stock. But let's also say, since we're talking about Apple, that we want enough time to stay in that stock while they roll out their new iPad, actually start selling it, right? They announced it yesterday, but actually start selling it. So we want to see what kind of sales are coming through. We want to stay in for the next earnings report and all that stuff.
Yesterday being the 27th of January.
Right. So we are going to select the July options, and those have roughly 6 months of time to it, all right? The $110 call, that is a deep in the money option. The $110 call is going for 100, which is equivalent to $10,000, okay? With Apple at 207 bucks, the 110 call is $97 in the money, which means that option literally has only $300 worth of time value. And since this option is so deep in the money, the delta is 0.98, which means it'll move 98 cents for every $1 the stock moves. In other words, the delta is approximately 98%, okay? If the stock moved up 20 bucks, your option would have increased by 98% of that, which means your option would have increased by $19.60 or $1,960, okay?
All right. So is that almost identical to the stock gain?
It is. It is almost identical because if it happened quickly, there'd be virtually no time loss or time decay in your option, and your option would now be worth $11,960, which means your option would have produced a profit of $1,960, and you could sell your option immediately and take your gains. So with this illustration so far, the amount of profit that you made, $1,960, versus what you could have made on the stock, $2,000, that is almost identical, but you've done so on literally less than half as much invested. So that is where this efficiency stuff comes into play.
Okay, but what if all of that took a full 6 months to happen?
Good question. If it took the entire 6 months to make that move, so what? There's the answer. Because Apple would still be Apple would be at $227. So if it's $227, that's $227 less your strike price of $110. That means your strike, your option, is now worth $117. That $117 is equivalent to $11,700, and that is what your option is worth. So all you gave up, even if it took a full 6 months to see that move, all you really gave up was that $300 in additional time value. So you still have a $1,700 gain. And a $1,700 gain in the option versus a $2,000 gain on the stock is still less than half the cost of the investment, and you have roughly the same kind of actual dollar gain. But since we are talking efficiency, right?
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about efficiency, this strategy nearly mimicked the absolute dollar gain, right? But when you look at it from a percentage basis, based on which example you're looking at, the first one or the second one, you've seen a percentage increase of anywhere from 17% to as high as 19.5% versus the stock guy's return of 10%. But again, the whole key here is that you put in half as much money, you've got the same dollar gain, and you have a significantly larger percentage rate of return, and that's pretty cool. And that is, once again, another illustration of the kinds of efficiencies you can get with options.
And the downside?
The downside is this. Your option is basically going to gain the same amount of money as the stock if it goes up, and you are basically going to lose the same amount of money as the stock does if it goes down. So at expiration, that is where you're going to be looking at the difference. So at expiration, your option has essentially mimicked the stock's price plus the lost time value, which in this example is $300. So the only major difference in risk in this example lies with ownership. If Apple were to drop $97 and it went all the way down to your strike of 110, right? Your option would have no more time value. It also would have no more intrinsic value, which means that option would have lost the entire $10,000 that you paid. Now, if the stock actually went down further, you could not lose any more on that option. But if the stock did go down $9,700, you're still down, or if it went down $97, the stock guy is down $9,700, which is very similar to what the option guy lost. In fact, if the stock continued to go down more, the stock guy would lose even more. The only real difference is that once that option expires, if Apple then shoots back up to 227, the stock guy is back to where he was when he started, but that option guy is out. He's lost his $10,000, and he's not going to be able to make any of that money back. But of course, you can always just buy another option and try it all over again. But the cool part is that with this kind of strategy, these deep in the money options, you're talking about spending a tiny amount of time value. Your option is comprised of almost entirely intrinsic value, and you are able, with a fraction of the amount of money, able to mimic, for all intents and purposes, what a stock does. And that is the epitome, in my opinion, of efficiency.
All right. Do you have a position in Apple?
I have Apple, but I don't have this 110 strike.
All right. An efficient way of looking at options. If you need to try to understand this in written form, there is a written piece on this week's options efficiency explanation. It's on Zacks.com's homepage, linked to from there anyway. Scroll down that page until you get to the headline in the options section of that homepage. It'll take you right to it, and it'll help you to better understand and maybe visualize it if you see it in writing. Just more information to help you know your options with Kevin Matras. I'm Terry Ruffalo.